Shavua Tov. It's good to be back for the 11 o'clock class on Monday on the Pirke Abot. Today, the 5th day of Shevat 5781, January 18th, 2021. Today's class, graciously sponsored by the Falak family, Le'ilui Nishmat, the beloved father, Ezra ben Sara, and by our esteemed president, Eli Levy and family, Le'ilui Nishmat, his beloved grandmother, Altun Bat Salha, Aliyah Shalom, Iratzon to the words of Torah, both Neshamot have an Aliyah in Gan Eden. Amen. We continue with our weekly learning of the Pirke Abot. Today, we learn chapter 4, Mishnah 2. Ben Azai Omer, Heve Ratz le Mitzvah Kalla, ran to perform even a minor mitzvah. Uboreach min ha'avera, and ran away, escape from sins. Shemizvah goreret mitzvah, one mitzvah attracts another mitzvah. Ba'avera goreret avera, and one sin brings another sin. Shesechar mitzvah mitzvah, the reward for a mitzvah is actually the possibility of doing another mitzvah. Uschar avera avera, and the reward or consequence of a sin, it brings another attraction to commit a sin. This is the literal translation of this particular Mishnah. We'll try to do an additional Mishnah, time allowing, and we'll read now the great commentaries of Rabbeinu Obadiah of Aventura. And it says that a mitzvah attracts another mitzvah, kach minhago shel olam. That is the ways of the world. That a person that is doing a mitzvah will have an easier time to do another mitzvah. And regretfully, on the other side, once the person starts doing one avon will attract another avon, and it becomes challenging to stop or to interrupt the doing of averot. Obviously, it's nothing impossible. The Teshuvah is always there, but we all understand that the Yetzer Hara doesn't like to lose any customers. Shesechar mitzvah, that the reward of a mitzvah is another mitzvah. Comes a great Rabbeinu Obadiah Aventura, and it says, Minashamayim, from the heavens, they help the person and they deliver to the availability of the person to do additional mitzvah in order to get not only the sechar, not only the reward for one, but for the other. It's like a person needs to do something of Kodesh, but then suddenly he says, okay, let me listen to the news, or let me watch the news online, and then one link brings to another, one click brings to another, and I think that we all are guilty to a certain extent in this matter, and therefore we need to know, the Mishnah says, we need to have the discipline. We'll take care of the Kedusha first, and then we deal with other matters. Another explanation says that when a person does a mitzvah, there is a certain oneg, there is a certain level of joy or enjoyment rather for the neshama. And regretfully, when a person does the avon, there is also some level of satisfaction, but that is obviously channeled through the Yetzer Hara. With that being said, let's go and dissect this Mishnah a bit. So Ben Azai says, run to do an easy mitzvah. What does it mean, easy mitzvah? There are a few explanations. One explanation could mean, very easy to do. Yani, okay, put a quarter in the kuppah, or put $1 in the tzedakah, okay? Or call someone to wish them a refuah shelema, or read Tehillim for somebody who needs a speedy recovery, okay? Very good. How much effort does that take? It's not going 20 flights upstairs on Shabbat, or walking 20 minutes to come to the synagogue on 100 degrees, so to speak. It's simply pick up the phone, make a quick phone call, and khalas, move on. Or another explanation, that a person considers the mitzvah to be, if I'm allowed to say such a thing, like a featherweight mitzvah. A simple mitzvah to do. An easy one. Easy credit. And therefore, the Mishnah says, do it with agility, zerizut, And one more requirement, simcha. And we discussed this a while back in the 9:15 class. The list of the Sefer Haredim, who explains that one of the requirements for the Mitsvot to be done properly actually are these two that we mentioned. There are 17 requirements, if I remember that class well. Unfortunately, I do not have the list yet, but guess what? With technology today, I may have it right in my desktop. Give me just a moment. Right here, I found it. I found it. I do have right here, I have the PDF. Mazel tov. I have it. So let's read some. It says, number 4 on the list, simcha. Do the mitzvah with joy. Another one, kulla velo miksata, meaning to say, try to do the mitzvah complete. Dikduk, do whatever detail of the halacha is applicable. Another one, zerizut, do it with agility, the way the Mishnah just explained. And pay for the mitzvah if it's required. These are only 3 of 17. Let's see. Keva hamura uboreach mina abera, even run away from an avon that seems to be an easy transgression to do. I believe the Gemara in Kiddushin says that the Yetzer Hara that wants to get the person starts with something simple and gradually increases, because the more averot the person does, the less critical the transgressions they look in the eyes of the person. And gradually will come a point that a person is so numb on the spiritual aspect of it that may come and do whatever avon comes on their way. Now, as the Mishnah mentions, sechar mizvah, mizvah, sechar abera, abera. You know, the Gemara writes an interesting statement in the tractate of Yoma. Yoma is the Gemara that discusses Yom Kippur. And because it discusses Yom Kippur, there are many interesting concepts in that Gemara, not only related to the fast of Kippur, to the service of the Bet HaMikdash, but one of the topics the Gemara discusses is the topic of Teshuvah. And the Gemara mentions 2 particular statements. Number 1, the Gemara says, Abale taher mesayein lo. If a person wants to become purified, what does it mean? If a person wants to get closer to Hashem, a person wants to do Teshuvah, mesayein lo. Shamayim lends a hand to the person and puts in their way or puts in their life certain situations that will help the person grow spiritually. But parallel to that, the Gemara says, Habali tame, but God forbid a person who instead of getting close to Hashem wants to take a step back, pothin lo, yani the doors are open for the person to have the freedom of choice. This is how this Pirush gives on the Mishnah. I think that the Mishnah is and the question is, why run to the mitzvah? I cannot walk to do the mitzvah. I cannot wait till the mitzvah comes to me. So it says here that she'adam sarich lirot tamid. A person must always look at the mitzvah, that once the mitzvah is in front of us, don't let it spoil. What does it mean? The Gemara discusses this in the connection of mitzvot don't let it spoil. What does it mean? The Gemara discusses this in the connection of mitzvot and matzot. They sound similar. Matzot, mitzvot. The Gemara writes, Ushmartem et hamatzot. Protect the matzah. Meaning to say, do not allow the matzah to become hames. Because really, hames and matzah, everybody knows the differences. Which, interesting enough, that this was part of the message of the Zohar of today. Interesting enough that this was part of the message of the Zohar of today, discussing the benefits of matzah in Pesach, etc. But let's analyze for a moment matzah and hames. Both of them have water, both of them have a flour, both of them are mixed, and both of them are baked. So what's really the difference between hames and matzah? So some of the differences is, for example, that when it comes to it rises, it ferments, so to speak, it leavens, and then you bake it. That's the reason why the matzah is always very thin, and the hames, bread, rolls, etc., have a certain level and a certain height, because the air entered and the factor of time is part of it. But the Gemara says, Al tikre masot ella mitzvot. Don't just read that this pasuk is about the matzah, but this pasuk is actually to the mitzvot. And what the Talmud says, mitzvah hava'a leyadecha al tahmisenna. A mitzvah that is in front of you, don't let it to become hames. Remember what was one of the key ingredients that is the difference between hames and matzah? And we explained the fact of time. The factor of time is what determines hames and matzah. Okay, I'm not even talking about yeast. Once you add yeast, automatically everything is hames. But I'm talking about literally bread, water. But Avera is the opposite. Tamit rodefet ahar ha'adam. Always the Avon looks for customers. That means the Yetzer Hara. And therefore the person must muster up strength to avoid the Avon, or to avoid the Yetzer Hara of affecting the person. And therefore it says, She'aseh mitzvah. A person does a mitzvah. That becomes a magnet for the additional mitzvah. And how happy the person becomes when a person is able to do a few mitzvot in a row, even without planning it, with the beginning of the day. But the opposite is concerning the concept of the averot as well. And therefore it says that a person, through the mitzvot, he receives, and that's what it says here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says the Agra, the great Gaon of Vilna, Noten la'adam ruach mimarom. There is a godly spirit that dwells in every Jew that becomes a beacon of mitzvot. I didn't say Bitcoin. That's a whole different topic altogether. I'm talking about a beacon of mitzvot, an attraction to do mitzvot, and that's a godly gift when it comes to the person. And it says, שאם אדם עושה מעשה טוב, if a person does a good deed, that good deed attracts the power and the goodwill to do more. And the opposite is the same, unfortunately. For example, in Parasha Ki Tetzeh, Parasha Ki Tetzeh contains a tremendous amount of Mitsvot. And there, the Mitsvot have like a domino effect. What does it mean? For example, we have the mitzvah of Shilua Haken, to send away the mother bird. After that mitzvah, it comes the mitzvah of building a new home and creating a ma'akeh, a fence for protection. And once we have that, the person will be blessed to own vineyards. And after that comes the mitzvah of testing garments the one mitzvah created such a domino effect that more mitzvot are being done related to the blessing that the Torah gives us. And that's why the Pasuk says in the book of Tehillim, Derech mitzvotecha arus, I will run towards the ways of the mitzvah. Now, literally seconds, I think I'm back. Just a few moments. Beautiful. Excellent. We are back. But enan samim lev. But says the Me'am Lo'ez, sometimes we fail to realize that we do a mitzvah, but through the means of an avon. What does it mean? It says, shepog'im ba'acherim. They hurt others. For example, he brings a few examples. For example, a person who says, I need an aliyah because I have yortzeit. And he goes to the mesader or to the gabbai. And the gabbai says, let me see, how can I help you? Because there is another person that also has yortzeit today. The first fellow who asked says to the gabbai, I don't care. I must go up to the Sefer Torah. That kind of attitude, already it's called mitzvah hava'ah ba'avera. Obviously, it is nice if a person can go up to the Sefer in the Shabbat or in the day that a person has a yortzeit. But if there's only 3 aliyot and somebody asks for it in advance, etc., or if it's for a father or a mother, it's different than for a sibling. That's the halakha clearly stipulates the different levels of degrees when it comes to the mourning, etc. But I think what the Me'am Lo'ez is trying to say is, you know what? The neshama of the relative will be happier if this person relinquishes the aliyah and he says, you know what? If he already asked for it, faddal. I'm not going to take that honor from him. Just as the gabbai, as the rabbi rather, to do the ashkava le'ilui nishmat. And this is something that it makes a lot of sense. Because at the end of the day, number one, figure if the gabbai now is going to tell him, I'm sorry, but that fellow has a tough attitude and demanded the aliyah that I told you that I will give you. How do you think the first person will feel? Obviously not good and not happy. But you know what it says, the me'am lo'ez? ובמקום זכות לנפטר, יגרום לו עוול. Instead of benefiting the soul of the person that you want the aliyah for, or the ashkava and the kaddish, instead of promoting, we are demoting the neshama. Why? Because we try to do something by hurting another person. And also the person who grabs a mitzvah, even though that a person says, what's the big deal? I was faster. Nevertheless, sarich levakesh mimenu mechila. You must ask for forgiveness. Now, another pirush from Avot Rabbi Natan says that a person should always accustom themselves to do mitzvot. It's like a person comes to shul when they are middle-aged and when they are senior citizens, etc. Now, why they come to shul? For many good reasons. But when they come into shul was actually invested in this person's life, probably from childhood. And that's something that remains engraved in the heart of the person. So it says the Avot Rabbi Natan, שתהיה רגיל כל כך במזוות, that a person is so accustomed to do mitzvot constantly, which I believe that all of us do mitzvot constantly, non-stop. I hope, and most mitzvot and averot. So it says, run, and don't act like the businessmen who before they make a business deal, they make a calculation if all the efforts and all the time and the investment of time will be justified just to flip something and make 10% on the goods. The opposite. מה שתזדמן לידך, עשה. Mitzvah comes your way, do. What mitzvah is in front of you? Just grab a kaddish because you're walking and from one place to the other in the synagogue and there is a minyan saying the kaddish and you're able to answer a few amen, grab them. They need number 10 for a minyan and you have a few minutes, be that person. You have a few coins in your pocket and you walk next to the kuppah, give the tzedakah, so to speak. And these are the simple examples that I can talk to you because we are in the synagogue, so therefore these mitzvot are readily available. And comes the Pirke Abot and adds a fascinating hidush. Remember what I mentioned before, the Sefer Haredim, 17 steps for a mitzvah to be completed b'shelemut, yani like a AAA first class mitzvah. He talks about שהדברים מכוונים על שמחה של מצווה. It says, now we are talking about the happiness in the mitzvah. What does it mean, the happiness of the mitzvah? שאם אדם עוסק במצווה מתוך שמחה, if the person is doing the mitzvah with joy, עצם השמחה היא מצווה. The person now, the Ben Ish Chai brings this down, gets double mitzvah. One mitzvah for the actual mitzvah performed, plus an additional bonus round for doing the mitzvah with joy. Why? שעל ידי כך, because when the person is happy, when a mitzvah is done, נעשה המצווה חשובה יותר. The mitzvah now takes a whole new dimension. Why? Because now he feels good about the mitzvah he's doing or she's doing. ולהפך העבירה, and God forbid, the opposite happens when it comes to a transgression. שאם נהנה מן העבירה, that if the person experiences certain kind of happiness, joy or pleasure by doing the avon, that's also something that a person will have to deal with if it's in the mitzvah in a positive way or not. Now, with this being said, the Me'am Lo'ez suddenly takes a slight detour of the main text of the Mishnah and discusses a beautiful mitzvah known as the mitzvah of loving Hashem. There is a positive commandment from the Torah, Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, the first verse in the Shema Israel, love Hashem bechol levavecha, with your heart, bechol nafshecha, with your soul, bechol meodecha, and whatever you have. So he explains as follows. That every Jew believes that they love Hashem, which is beautiful. And if we ask someone in the topic of love, which a while back we read from the Pele Yoez, how many degrees of love are there? How many? If I remember correctly, there are 8 or 10 levels of love. They all love, but it's divided. Love to Hashem, love to your parents, love to your wife, love to your children, love to your friends, love to the Torah, those who learn the Torah, love for your friends, I believe, and love for yourself. They all love, L-O-V-E, ahava. But needless to say, that the way you love your parents is a bit different than the way you love your cousins or your friends. It's different levels. They're all good, but different levels. So if somebody asks you, who do you love the most? So many people's automatic answer will say, I love Hashem the most. Beautiful. Hazak, if that is the true answer. But comes the Me'am Lo'ez and dissects what does it mean, the love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not that short, but based on what I was able to see, I think that it's worth it, with your permission, to translate the 3 levels of love, or the 3 different scenarios of love related in our human life and in our godly relationship. Because at the end of the day, as I mentioned in the early class today at 9:15, that part of our goal and our mission in life, besides being ambassadors to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but also means that we merge both worlds. The world of the physical aspect of life and the spiritual aspect of life. And this is our goal. Our goal is to make a joint effort between both parts of life, the physical and the spiritual. If a Jew lives like a Jew and acts like a Jew, exactly that's what we are doing. So let's see the beautiful explanation of the Me'am Lo'ez. So it says, ask yourself, how much effort we invest in our life. I'm talking about now marriage. For our life, for our body, for our wealth, to buy jewelry to the wife. That's what it says here, ladies. I didn't write this. Gentlemen, don't be upset at me. That's what it says. You want to make sure your wife looks presentable. You buy her nice garments. That's part of the ketubah writing. Or to bring your children to be, and I should say, not or, and make sure that your children are properly dressed, presentable, clean. And how much people invest in the paintings of the home, meaning to say how the home of a person lives or looks like. Different things related to different matters of physical and financial life. Now, imagine yourself it says, will people travel great distances to do a mitzvah? Will a person be willing to go the extra mile and spend extra money to buy a beautiful pair of tefillin? And will the person try to beautify their spiritual life or the mitzvot like we beautify our homes, and every certain amount of years we must paint the home, and we must change the floor, and we must do an open space kitchen, and we must have the last gadgets or the latest appliances, etc.? So it seems to imply that when it comes to mitzvot, some people, they just find the easy way out, try to get a free ride, try to get a free round, and they do what they can. So it says, for certain matters, a person is willing to go the extra mile. But when it comes to a personal mitzvah, the person is wearing the same tefillin of the bar mitzvah 40 years ago. Or the person is wearing the same talet from the bar mitzvah. Or the person uses the lulav and the etrog of the synagogue. Or a person just buy a cheapy mezuzah that could be borderline kasher or not. And Chas v'Shalom, that is going to spend a bit more to have a nicer mezuzah, a drop larger mezuzah. You know, many times people want a small mezuzah. I'll tell you one thing. The smaller the mezuzah is, the more questionable the kashrut of the mezuzah will be. Because you have to understand, the parchment being so small, how well can you write in a very tiny, small parchment? I'm not saying that there are not kosher mezuzot on the tiny size, but I think what the Melam Lo'ez is trying to say is, why when you want your home and you want your bank account, you want mega size, and you want mega bedrooms and mega everything, mega like mega money, whatever. And when it comes to a mezuzah, you want a tiny yani built it in into the wall, not to be visible, because God forbid that somebody will see a mezuzah. Chas v'Shalom. I hope that this example doesn't apply, but this is something that popped up in my mind. Another thing. How do we manage the time? So it says here how much time the person invests in working. How many hours? It's difficult to answer. But I'm sure that if we ask the audience how much they work, we'll have different answers. Some people will tell me, I work 10 hours a day. Another person will say, I work 12 hours a day. Another person will say, I work 8 hours a day, 6 hours a day. Okay, let me ask you, how many hours a day do we spend in godliness? How many hours a day we spend in godliness? Godliness means praying and learning. Let's do the number. If a person prays with a minyan, I'll give you a discount, 45 minutes to an hour shaharit. Mincha and Arvit, half an hour. That's an hour and a half. But that is for praying only. There is no learning whatsoever when you pray. Although it connects you with God and gives you a chance to give or to request and to thank and to praise Hashem, but so far there is no learning involved. So I once heard from a great rabbi that a person must give ma'aser back to God. In other words, that a person must spend 2 hours and 40 minutes of the day for godly service. Godly service includes praying and learning. which is not a lot. Because if we already have an hour and 30, an hour and 40 minutes just for the 3 prayers in the day, so you have only left over an hour to learn of Torah, which is not a lot, but it's something. And that's basically what the Me'am Lo'ez is trying to say. It says, you love Hashem. You love Hashem to ask Him things. But what about to give God a gift? So now, the love to Hashem, it seems to be from the lips, but not really in practicality, because we're putting God as a secondary priority. And on top of that, you have to add family time, you have to have spouse time, to talk, to communicate, to dialogue with your wife, to spend time with your children, working more, just for the record. And I'm the exception in this case, in this statement. And when I say I mean my friends and colleagues, which are in the rabbinate or in teaching Torah, whatever scenario it is, because it's a whole different situation. We are always doing things and helping people and programming things for the Kehillah, etc. So no one should say, no, I don't work more than 8 hours a day. Rabbis do work more than that, but it's the exception. But from the world of business perspective, we need to know, not for working more, it says the Hayom Yom, the person will earn more. So what does that mean? That if a person shows HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, I'm making my ishtadlut, I'm praying 3 times a day with a minyan, I am devoting an hour or more to learn between the morning and the evening, I took care of 2.5 hours of the day, then I have another, let's call it just easier, 21 hours, let's say, I have 21 hours of the day. Take out 6 hours, I'm giving you a discount in sleeping, you already have 15 hours left over. You have to spend time with your wife, with your kids, you drive to work, you come to work, you eat, you talk to your friends, you do Mitsvot throughout the day. So how many really clean hours or net hours do we have to cover everything and still go to work? 8 hours is the formula that the great Maimonides gives, how the day of the person should be divided. And the third concept is, when we devote the time to pray and the time to learn, where is our mind? Is the mind present in the actual performance of the mitzvah, or our mind is wandering and traveling all around? And that is the reason why many of us, especially when it comes to the Shaharit prayer, what many people do, they don't have the cell phone on them. They leave it in the car, or they leave it inside the koracha, they put it in airplane mode or in silence mode. This way, the hour or the 45 minutes, depends on the weekday, that a person has for praying, it will be uninterrupted, it will be undiluted. It will not be shredded cheese, the way you put a paper to the shredder. It will be actually a nice chunk. It will be a nice slice of cheese. Hamavdil, I'm not comparing the cheese with the tefillah, but that's basically one of the examples the Zohar brings down when a person learns Torah with a lot of interruptions. The learning is not as powerful and meaningful as it is. And therefore it says that a person needs to have the proper mindset and discipline, that there is a time that we must devote to God, like there is a time that we devote to our wives, and there is a time that we devote to our children and to our families and to our work. How many times a person, because they are busy working, they skip lunch, or they skip breakfast and they have lunch, or sometimes they don't have breakfast or lunch, they only have a coffee throughout the day or two, and they have dinner at night. Now, why don't you stop to eat? Why don't you stop 15 minutes to have a fruit, to have a snack? No, I'm working, I'm busy. So with the same dedication and devotion and lack of interruption we are investing in the business world, says the Me'am Lo'ez, let's try the same formula when it comes to the matter of spiritual connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the question will be asked again. Do we love Hashem, or Hashem is not on our priority list? I believe that the Me'am Lo'ez, in these final few minutes, gave us an eye-opening, at least that's the way I see it, and I'm sure that many of the wonderful audience will agree, that how important is to have consistency and discipline in the minutes and hours of the day that we have in our relationship with God, through prayer, through Torah learning, and obviously, as the foundation of the mitzvah was, the Mishnah was today, how diligent, how happy we are when it comes to the performance of our mitzvot. My dear friends, I'd like to say everybody have a beautiful day. Shavua Tov u'mevorach. We'll see each other, God willing, tomorrow morning, 9:15 via iTorah.com. And once again, we express our gratitude to the Falak family for graciously sponsoring today's class, La'ilui Nishmat, their beloved father, Ezra ben Sara, and to the Levy family for graciously sponsoring today's class, La'ilui Nishmat, their beloved grandmother, Altun bat Salha, Aliyah Shalom. May the zechut of learning Mishnah brings Aliyah to the Neshamot as well. Have a great day, everybody. Shavua Tov u'mevorach.